Have you ever had something on a road trip that you couldn't stop thinking about? Well, a couple weeks ago, my husband and I went for a weekend drive. We stopped at this cute little country store, and my husband actually picked up a loaf of jalapeno cheddar bread. It was so good, I decided to recreate the recipe. And that's what we're gonna do today here in my kitchen. But I'm gonna do a couple little twists. One is I'm gonna make it like a little pull-apart bread, and of course, I'm gonna put bacon in it. So I know bread can be super intimidating, but don't worry, I'm here to walk you through the process step by step, and I'm sure you'll be successful. My name's Nancy. Welcome to Nancy's Homestyle Kitchen, where I like to teach simple recipes with affordable ingredients, and there is no pressure to be perfect. Let's get started. Here are all the ingredients that you're gonna need to make the bread. You're gonna need all-purpose flour, some cheese. Today I'm gonna use cheddar cheese and mozzarella, yeast, sugar, some granulated garlic, salt, pizza seasoning, and some cheddar cheese powder, some diced jalapeños. Now you could use one or two depending on how spicy you like it. Today I'm just gonna use one. 6 slices of bacon that I've cut into little cubes that will fry up. I have a cup of water, and we're gonna use some olive oil for the bread and to coat our bowl. The first thing we need to do is activate our yeast. So to do that, we're gonna take 1 cup of warm water. This is about 110 degrees. Pour it into our mixing bowl. Then we're going to add 2 tablespoons of granulated white sugar and 2 1/4 teaspoons of active dry yeast. So just get that in your bowl. Give it a stir, and this is gonna take about 5 to 10 minutes for the yeast to become bubbly and active. While the yeast is activating, I wanted to tell you about this cheddar cheese powder that I'm using in this recipe. This is from King Arthur Baking Company, and they call it their Better Cheddar Cheese Powder, but you can find something similar either at your local grocery store or on Amazon, and it's just something nice to add to the bread to help impart that cheese flavor and take your bread to the next level. The yeast is activated, so now it's time to start mixing the dough. To start with, I'm gonna use 1 tablespoon of the cheddar cheese powder, a teaspoon each of pizza seasoning, salt, and granulated garlic. So we'll sprinkle that in. And then I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And now we need to add flour. So for the flour, we need to start with 3 cups. Okay, so here's 3 level scoops of flour. And then we're going to go ahead and put this in the mixer and add my hook. Now we're just gonna start this on low because we'll get flour everywhere if we don't. And it's gonna take, once it comes together, we're gonna let the mixer do its thing and knead this bread for about 5 minutes. If you don't have a stand mixer, you can absolutely make this in a bowl. Just get everything incorporated, and then once it's incorporated nicely, turn it out onto a floured surface and knead it for about 7 minutes. Okay, now it's started to come together, so we can go ahead and increase the speed. And you don't want to knead this dough on the high setting. I try to do it around medium, and it seems to work really well. As you can see, the dough has really cleared off the side of the bowl, and it's pulling all the little bits off the bowl. So at this point, I feel pretty comfortable with the dough coming together like this, so I'm not gonna add any more flour, but let's watch it and see what happens over the next 5 minutes while this kneads. And I'm gonna move the mixer. So I'm only about 2.5 minutes into this process, and you can see how clean this bowl is. So I'm definitely not going to add any more flour, and I'm just gonna let it finish for about another 2.5 minutes. Okay, our dough is kneaded and it is ready. And let me tell you, you guys, I wish you could be in the kitchen because it smells so good. You can smell the garlic and the pizza seasoning. So we want to see if this dough is done, and it's nice, it's not sticky, and when I spread it apart, it does the little window pane test, like I can see through the dough without breaking it. So this is definitely done. So what we want to do is take the dough off the hook, and I have another bowl here. We're going to put a drizzle of olive oil in this bowl and use a pastry brush. Just we want to coat the bottom of the bowl with olive oil so we can have the dough rise in here and not stick to the bowl. And go ahead, take your dough out. And what I do is just kind of put it in and give it a once over and then a once over again, where it kind of coats evenly over the ball of dough with the olive oil. So all we have to do now, grab some plastic wrap, put it over our bowl, and we're just gonna let it rise. It's gonna take anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours for the dough to rise and double in size. So I like to cover it with plastic wrap and then put a towel over the top just to kind of keep it warm. There's no drafts. So I'll show you what this looks like when it's doubled. While your bread is rising, and if you haven't done so already, now is the time to cook up your bacon, dice your jalapeños, and shred your cheese. And as usual, Miss Georgia can smell cheese from a mile away, and I need to pay the cheese tax. It's been 2 hours and the dough has risen. So it has definitely doubled in size. So we're gonna roll this out, but before we do that, let's sprinkle some flour on our surface. This little silicone mat I got really inexpensively at Walmart, and it's great for this process because it really sticks to the counter and doesn't move around. So let's see, you could see where putting some olive oil in that bowl really helped with it releasing. So the goal is to get this rolled out to the size of 12 by 16. This mat has some measurements on it, so it goes from 1 to 12 inches, and then there is 16 inches going across the top. So that's going to give me a good guide on getting it to the right size so we can put our toppings on and cut them into squares as evenly as we can. What I like to do is roll it out a little bit, sprinkle some more flour, flip it over, and you're just going to repeat the process until you get it as close to the 12 by 16 as you can. Again, we're not trying to be perfect, we're just trying to get it close. At the end of this video, I'm going to give you some tips too on different ways to use this bread. One tip on how to store it and a couple ways to use it, and I think you might find them really interesting, and just to give a new spin on some old classic favorites. And you'll see as I'm doing this, I'm finding that I have areas back in here that are thicker. So as I roll, I'm just trying to kind of push them in the direction that I want it to go. And that's helping it get into that shape that I'm looking for. But that is about close enough. So here's my 1 inch line starts here, and 16 is here. Let's scooch it in just a little bit more. And then here from top to bottom is 12 inches, and that's pretty good. Okay, the next step is to sprinkle your jalapeno slices or diced onto the bread. I used 1 jalapeno. I don't like it super spicy, but if you like it spicy, you could use more than 1 jalapeno. You could try with different kinds of peppers, but this is how I like it, just enough heat. And by taking all the seeds out and everything too, you really do eliminate a lot of that heat from the pepper. And this doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to get it kind of as evenly as possible. And I'm going to do the same with the bacon. Okay, so we'll just get this kind of spread out because what we're going to do is cut this into squares. So I really want to try to get a piece of bacon that's going to end up being in each of our squares. Okay, and then the cheese. So this is about 2 cups. So I have about a cup of mozzarella and a cup of cheddar cheese. And we're going to put half of this in the bread. Well, a little more than half. Let's say put about 1.5 cups of cheese in the bread. And then the rest of it I'm going to put on top of the bread. Okay, that looks good. So let's just kind of smash it down because we're going to start moving this bread and stacking it. And I really want these toppings to try to stay attached to the dough. A tool that's going to come in handy is a pizza cutter. If you don't have a pizza cutter, just use a knife. And what I want to do is, because this is roughly 16 inches across, I'm going to do 4-inch cuts going this way, and then I'll do cuts going the other way. So let's measure 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, three, 4. I'm sitting here doing this, just thinking, you know, my quilting rulers would really come in handy right now. I'm so used to using them, I don't even know how to just count inches anymore. Okay. Now let's cut this into thirds. So this is roughly 12 inches in height. So I'm going to go about 4 inches and 4 inches here. All right, so our pieces are cut. Now we just need to stack all the pieces. And I'm just going to start stacking them. And we want to try to keep it as even as possible, because if you don't, your loaf of bread is going to come out lopsided. Ask me how I know. You can kind of give it a smoosh as you're going along. Let's just take this one. And you'll see they're not all exactly even, and that is okay. Then I'm going to start a second stack. Keep smashing all of your ingredients into the top. Okay, and now we're going to make sure we get all of this goodness. So take a loaf pan, drizzle a tiny bit of olive oil in it, just like you did for your bowl, and coat it all the way around. And then we're going to stack these in the pan. It's just going to turn it up on its edge. Okay, and then kind of move them around a little bit. At this point, if some of the toppings fall down into the pan, it's not that big of a deal. We just want the dough to be kind of as even across the top as we can. I've done this before and had way too much dough on one side, and then my loaf had this big lump on the edge. And then all these little bits and pieces just throw on top, as well as some extra cheese. Okay, There we have our layered jalapeno bacon cheese pull-apart loaf. So now we need to cover this again, and we're gonna let this rise for about 30 to 45 minutes. In the meantime, I'm gonna go ahead and get my oven preheating to 350 degrees so we could bake this. So I'll see you in just a few minutes. It's been 45 minutes and our bread is ready to go into the oven. Again, the oven is 350 degrees, and I'm gonna put this on the center rack. I have a cookie sheet on the rack below because as this bakes, you might get some of the cheese melting and dripping, and you don't want to get that on the bottom of your oven because it'll start smoking and set your smoke detectors off. Ask me how I know. All right, 35 minutes on the timer, and then I'll come back and check and see how it is. The timer went off at 35 minutes. I checked it and it didn't look quite done, so I went ahead and did it for an additional 5 minutes. And we're gonna test this and see. I want it to be about 190. So let's see where we're at. Yep, we are there. So let's take it out. Whew. And you can see I did get some cheese drips on there, so I'm really glad I put the pan down on the bottom. Okay, here is our beautiful bread. It is hot. I think we have some melted cheese drip action going on both sides here. Looks fantastic. So I put about half a cube of butter in a pot and just set it on the back of the stove, and it just melted while the bread was baking. But let's go ahead and just put some melted butter on here. It should kind of creep down in those folds a little bit, and we're gonna let this cool for about 5 minutes, and then we'll turn it out onto the cooling rack because this bread is best served toasty hot and fresh, just like this. So I said if you stick around to the end, I'm gonna share some tips with you. So let's go over those while we're waiting for this to cool off a bit. So one thing that I think this bread would be amazing for is if you make grilled cheese with tomato soup. So you could just slice it and just experiment with different types of grilled cheese. That would be fantastic. This would also make really super yummy croutons. I do have another video for my Caesar salad recipe where I go over my process for the croutons, and I'll link that in the description below. And then also, even if you just wanna slice it up, and you could freeze the individual slices, you could throw in the toaster in the morning, put a little bit of cream cheese on there and a fried egg, and you'll have a delicious breakfast. All right, it's that time, the best part. Pulling it apart and seeing this cheesy pull-apart bread. You can see all that steam escaping. You see all the bacon and the jalapeños and the cheese. Oh man, it's super hot. Everything's always hot when I taste it here. I had to let this bread cool off for just a few more minutes because it was so hot. But let's give it a taste test. You can see the jalapeños in there, the cheese. It is so nice and tender and full of flavor. And compared to the loaf that we got on our little weekend drive, I think this came really, really close. So anyway, if you try this bread recipe, please let me know in the comments. The most time-consuming part of it is the rising process, but otherwise, it's super approachable. I know you'll have great success with it, and I really hope you try it. I will catch you on the next video.